Hello everyone, welcome to Star English. 여러분, 유유상종이란 말 아시죠? 성향이 비슷한 사람끼리 모인다는 뜻입니다. 이 말은 영어로 어떻게 표현할까요? Birds of a feather flock together. 같은 깃털 가진 새끼리 함께 모인다, right? Birds of a feather, same feathers, flock, fly together, right? And what do you all have in common? You're here to learn some English with me, Stephen Revere, on Star English. Let's get started. 여러분, 재즈 좋아하세요? 재즈의 매력은 연주자가 자신의 감정에 따라 자유롭게 연주하는 데 있죠. 그런데 한국 전통 음악에도 재즈와 비슷한 것이 있다는 사실 아십니까? 바로 시나위입니다. 시나위, the 굿판, right? Right in front of the 굿판, the 굿 dances and sings and dances, and meanwhile, the players, the 악사들, they play their instruments right along naturally, freely, as they would like. And that's exactly similar to jazz and shinawi, okay? So, today we have another artist. Jocelyn Clark is back with us today, and we're going to hear more about her life in Korea and how she became a great 가야금 artist. Let's meet her. Hello, Jocelyn. Welcome to Star English again.
Nice to see you again.
Nice to see you too. Go ahead, have a seat here. So, after a week of absorbing everything and learning about you, you've obviously been interested in music since a very young age. What really got you started in music?
Well, I mean, like all young children, my parents he brought me to my first violin lesson when I was like probably 3 years old. I played a 16th size violin, and mostly I laid on the floor with my
screaming and crying. I don't want to play violin.
No, just being a pain in the ass. Excuse me.
Yeah, being a pain. Yes, a bad child.
Yes.
Okay. Yes. And so you've got this background now. You've played Western instruments and you've played Korean instruments and many different Asian instruments. What do you think of the difference between the Western instruments, particularly stringed instruments, because you played a lot of stringed instruments? What do you think about the difference between the West and the East?
Well, it's interesting that you bring up the topic of stringed instruments, because in both places, in both the West and in the East, the stringed instruments hold the most prominent position. Mm-hmm. You know, if you look at the orchestra, the concertmaster is the violin player. In a Korean traditional ensemble, the 가야금 and komungo sit in the front and lead the ensemble if there's no singer. Mm-hmm. But the instruments make sound in a different way, right? I mean, to pull a string, you can always do something while the sound is happening. Whereas if with the pluck string, you're always doing something to the sound as the sound is decaying. So it's a very different way to think about, you know, what's important in music, right?
So in the Asian instruments, there's more plucking?
Well, no, the stringed instruments. If we look at haegum, right? This haegum, the two-string fiddle, like Chinese erhu haegum.
Right.
This is a bowed instrument. It would be closest maybe to like some kind of tiny cello in terms of technique, or, you know, violin basically.
Right.
It's not classified as a stringed instrument in Korea.
Right.
It's classified as a wind instrument.
Huh?
It's not a string instrument.
Why?
Because it sustains, and because it sounds a little bit like a wind instrument.
Oh, really?
Or, you know, like a human voice. So you can see that there's a philosophy behind it. Obviously, it's made it. In Korea, is not in East Asia. We don't classify according to strings, or it would be silk category, and it has silk strings and horsehair.
Silk is that the Korean word for a stringed instrument?
It's the silk category. So
silk.
현금 is right. 현악기.
현악기.
But it's in the silk category of instruments. So in East Asia, Japan, China, and Korea, it's like silk is one category. It's usually strings. Earth would be a category. So like the ocarina, for instance.
Okay.
Wood is another category. So the wind instruments mostly. And skin would be the drum. Mm-hmm. In the West, we don't quite classify in the same way. But when we talk about string instruments, we mean something very specific. And in East Asia, we're meaning plucked instruments.
Plucked instruments. Okay. Oh.
And these are instruments that are associated with thinking classes in some way.
Uh-huh.
And I don't know,
in both countries, or?
Yes, but who those people are and the way they think obviously are different, because in the West, it also has to do with history, and it has to do with all sorts of things. The whole Romantic movement in the West, and what Paganini came about, and everything changed. So, so what we have today in the West as classical music might, if you used a Korean system, be classified as folk music, because it's so ostentatious and showy. Whereas, and Sanjo's like that too, but that's folk music, right? Mm-hmm. So the classical music, which would be 궁중음악, or like court music, 정악, which would be it's hard to classify across cultures because it doesn't work very well.
Right.
So it's very interesting.
The different perspectives on the different kinds of music make it difficult to compare, don't they? It's kind of along with the ethnomusicology program. It's only ethnomusicology if you're studying the other countries' cultures. So,
you can also think of ethnomusicology as just an approach to musicology that focuses on culture. And so, in that sense, Western music fits right into an ethnomusicological approach just as well as anything else does, right?
Now we're into semantics here, right?
We don't need to be. But the thing is, the question is a very interesting one for me, because with my ensemble that we talked about last week, 3Z Plus, this is the English name.
Oh, the name is the 3Z Plus.
Well, this is what we call it in English.